Welcome back to Crimson Tales, where I bring fanfiction stories to life through narration.
This fanfiction story, Harry Potter, Lycan, is written by author Legendary Chaos. Now let's start the video. Weeks passed by since Harry's summoning the Spirit King of Water, and a week of no sex. A week that was rough for the whole castle, as Harry's gloomy and slightly irritation transferred to most of the castle residents. Now, that week has long passed, and the castle had a more cheerful feel to it. It's already Halloween. Harry let out a slight sigh as over the last few weeks, he was on the lookout for Sirius. Only no matter where he looked or checked spots, Sirius hidden last time around, he didn't see a trace. Now he didn't have any option left but to wait for Sirius to break into the tower once more, as Halloween arrived. I rather he didn't, but we can't have everything being easy. Harry mentally sighed. Moving on down to the Great Hall, Harry also thought back to Ron's recent adventures. The boy continued to run around the castle, searching the castle in the dead of night. While he only was caught a handful of times, he appeared unwilling to give up his search, something that made Harry happy, but frowned too as his already bad marks grew worse. Due to his late-night adventures, Ron has been getting less and less sleep at night. As such, he was sleeping in or between classes, costing the entire house loads of house points and almost back down to zero. It's true that Harry didn't really care for the house cup as much this time around, but the others didn't feel the same way. Before long, Ron became the #1 disliked in Gryffindor and probably held the title for the rest of his years at Hogwarts. Not that it bothered the boy as greed radiated as he searched for the magical balls. "Dobby," Harry called out. "Master Harry." The small house elf appeared. While it took a bit, Harry slowly taught Dobby some manner and less energetic. He taught him mainly so he wouldn't scream or loudly announce his presence every time he called. It would be bad if he called Dobby and a time of silence is key, and the elf popped in screaming after all. "Do you know if a large black dog has been spotted around Hogwarts?" Harry asked, not knowing why he didn't ask this before now. "Dobby is sorry, Master Harry. Dobby doesn't know." The little house elf lowered his head. "So you know any of Hogwarts elves have seen him?" Harry frowned as he let out a sigh. Sirius should have been here, or at least in the castle, a few times by now. Yet there was no sight or even mention of him. Something couldn't have happened to him on his way here or escape, could it? Sirius should still be alive. But did he get lost? Harry thought. In a hidden-away mansion, a certain black dog was wagging its tail as it watched a large group of beautiful women as their clothes were stripped away and photos were taken. The dog wanted to bark at the scene, completely glad he took this detour on his way to a certain traitorous rat. As the day began to wind down, and Harry grew more impatient at no signs of his godfather, he looked like some brooding prince as he sat in a corner. Katie, who was practicing her transformation, was at his feet, growling at those who tried to disturb him. "What type of wolf is she?" he heard a few ask, but no one had any idea. At most, they could only offer some random guess, such as brown wolf or maybe an ancient wolf type, judging by her size. Over the past year, Harry's and Katie's wolf form were growing and at the moment were slightly bigger than some large dog breeds. They still had growing to do, but they could only wait in that aspect. While Harry tapped his finger as he stared at the wall, a slight dent formed under his finger as he subconsciously added more strength. As time passed by, once he noticed what he was doing, he wandless weared it. "You stupid godfather. Once I find you, I'm going to beat you for making me worried," Harry thought as he headed to bed for a while. A few days have passed by since Halloween came to pass. In that time, not much happened, besides Harry growing more annoyed. There still has been zero sighting of his godfather, or the man is covering his track almost inhuman-like. While Harry sat in the common room doing vertical push-ups to pass the time until morning, the portrait opened and a large black dog entered. As the two stared at each other, Harry's eyes narrowed. Flipping to his feet, Harry glared down at Sirius, who only now was arriving. While he wanted to call out his name or hug the man, all his worrying and impatience over the last few days boiled at the surface. "It's about time you arrived," Harry growled before pulling out his wand and stunning the dog. Tossing his godfather over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes after turning him human again, Harry carried him up to his trunk and stuffed him inside. He would deliver the man to Dumbledore later so they can get the ball rolling on getting him free. "Why does it feel like I am stuffing a body into the boot of my car?" Harry thought as he went down to the common room once more. Once more, beginning his minor workout to pass the time, Harry took his mind off his godfather, stuffed into his school trunk. He would get to the reason why the man was late this time around after he cooled off. Harry only hoped it was a good reason for worrying him. If not, his godfather is going to get a beating twice-fold. Should I spend this weekend with Tonks? Harry thought, as she was going to be busy for the next while. When Sirius Black opened his eyes, he found himself strapped to a chair in Dumbledore's office. It wasn't an unfamiliar scene, as he and his three friends used to find themselves here quite often. Only this time, instead of Professor McGonagall there ranting at Dumbledore to punish him, he found the greatest wizard of their time there staring at him with eyes filled with life, despite being over 110. Next to him was his godson, leaning on the stair railing with his arms crossed, muscle definition covering his arms as he wore a black vest and short-sleeved shirt. Finally, the escaped wizard found Minister Fudge there with a few aurors with their wands drawn. Only they weren't pointed at him, but next to him where he found another person bound to a chair. There a balding and chubby man with dirt covering him sat there terrified. His crooked teeth were on display as he appeared to be pleading, but no sounds were heard. "Looks like our guest is finally awake," Dumbledore said, slightly cheerful. Harry's stunner must have been a bit more powerful than he thought. "Yes, while it's nice to see a powerful wizard as young as he is, I would like to know why you have an escaped convict and a not-so-dead man in your office," Fudge asked, trying to appear brave. "Well, Sirius isn't really a convicted convict from my understanding. There isn't much of a trail record," Harry said as he tossed a small file onto the large wooden desk. "Unless not many wish to speak during such a trial. Most of the transcripted was poorly made as even his birthday was recorded wrong. He doesn't look like a 99-year-old man to me." Picking up the file, Fudge looked it over and Relent agreed, before handing it off to a woman behind him. She wore a monocle in one eye as she scanned over the file before balling her hand into a fist. "It's the official record," she said before storing it away. Fudge looked very displeased, but he could only wait to see what the two had planned. However, he has some inkling to what it was. After all, the two bound to the chair were a dead giveaway. "What is it you want?" "Just a proper investigation," Harry shrugged. "Well, more just interview them to discover what happened that night." Fine, Fudge said as he waved for Amelia Bones to begin. "I'd rather keep this on the down low for the time being, so we just have to do it here." Harry had to nod as marching the pair of men through the ministry probably wasn't the smartest idea. Both would probably be dead before the day is out by one of Voldemort's soldiers or sympathizers. It was just Harry was more surprised at Fudge thinking about that. "If we do it here, I can gain some time to figure out how to boost my popularity with this," Fudge thought. The interview that took place surprised Harry as it was fairly simple. It was only then he remembered that after the war, did the interviewing process get more detailed. Due to most purebloods that followed Voldemort, the Auror department was downgraded, so most of the investigating and power they might once had was gone, so the pureblood could get away doing illegal trades. It only really covered their name, age, what happened, and if they were the secret keeper. In the end, Sirius was ready to do the jig, while Peter looked deathly pale, for Fudge looked like he swallowed a lemon, as it was going to be tricky to use this information. For the time being, this meeting never took place, and Sirius is still on the run, Amelia said, as she rubbed her forehead, "until we can figure something out."
"I have to agree. If Sirius goes out now, someone will probably attempt to kill him." Harry sighed as fanatics were always the worst at times. Reasoning and logic doesn't work on them. If they did, they're doing Harry a great favor, such as avenging his parents.
"Then what should we do?"
Fuge asked. "Take Peter and say some new evidence came to light. Say you are investigating, and after a while say that the ministry made a mistake to make yourself look better. Say you are going to try your best, so this doesn't happen again in the future," Dumbledore explained as he and Harry discussed this beforehand.
"Very well."
After saying their piece, most left, leaving only Harry, Sirius, and Dumbledore behind. Left behind, Sirius found himself wondering what he was going to be doing now. For the time being, he was still on the run and his target of revenge was taken away. His godson appeared to be in good health, and from what he heard is the apprentice of Dumbledore. "Sirius, why were you late? We were expecting you on Halloween," Harry asked, which Sirius could only look at him confused. "Something dangerous and unexpected always happens on Halloween, so I figured you would have appeared," Harry clarified, only to confuse the man more. Seeing it didn't help Harry try something else. An actual seer sent a letter saying you would appear on Halloween. Ah, Sirius said as he leaned back, before explaining with a wink, well, I found a hidden mansion filled with playful, beautiful women. Sirius, do you remember where that mansion is? Harry asked, trying not to sound excited as he caught on to the hidden meaning. Sure, Sirius grinned. Boys, before you two run off, peeking or whatever, we need to figure out where Sirius will be staying for the time being. Dumbledore interrupted the two. We can just say that he is my second familiar I found, Harry suggested with a shrug. While rare, it isn't uncommon for wizards or witches to have 2 or 3 of them. No one should be able to identify his animagus form now that Remus isn't here. Sirius? Dumbledore looked towards the bound man for his answer. Sirius thought about it before nodding. At least this way he could stay near his godson while trying to figure out what to do with his life, now that he was on the way to being free, a day he thought would never happen. Very well. Now off you two go, and if you two slip away on Hogsmeade weekend, be sure to be back on time. Dumbledore gave them a wink to the duo. Greatest wizard alive indeed, Sirius thought. In his office, Dumbledore slowly paced as he pouted. Earlier in the day, Madame Pomfrey was doing a health check on all the professors, so naturally, he found himself involved, but if that was all he wouldn't mind. During his checkup, his sugar levels were slightly high. While it's at the level, nobody was really concerned about it. He was told that he would need to cut back on sweets for a while, which got his bag of sweets taken away. So what if I've been sucking on a few extra pieces of candy lately? It has been slightly stressful at Wizengamot for the last few days. Dumbledore mentally grumbled. Ever since Peter was discovered to be alive, some followers either attempted to kill or help him escape. It also didn't help that Rita somehow managed to learn of it and began blasting the Ministry, which only served to drag the initial plan out longer. I wonder how Harry can deal with it when he is surrounded by women, Dumbledore thought as he compared his staff to Harry's harem. Some days they can just be unreasonable. What Dumbledore didn't know was that Harry had a similar problem from time to time when he began dating Daphne and Fleur. Over time, however, they worked out a schedule that allowed them to have him for a while to themselves, and together, though both decided to have only one of them would look over his health. Each year as both caused too much confusion. It is about a week before my monthly shipment of candy is due to arrive. I'm sure it won't be that bad of a wait, Dumbledore thought. What Dumbledore didn't count on was his small addiction to sweets. So what may have been only a slight stressful day was multiplied. For each time he reached for a sweet, he could only grab air. Do I need to call in a favor from Harry? I'm sure he will be willing to help me out for all the time I helped him. Dumbledore mumbled. After he agrees, I will give him money and an excuse to sneak down to Hogsmeade. There he will buy me a bag of sweets and return secretly. That is where we will meet in secret, as he passes me the goods, all behind the other professor's back. Dumbledore laughed a bit mischievously as he plotted. Now I need to find Harry so my master plan can begin, he thought as he started heading to spots Harry tends to frequency. Walking the corridors, greeting a few students who walked past, Dumbledore ended up catching a few students in situations he would rather not see. He also had to end up giving detentions and taking points for a couple of them. While I don't care if a couple is having intercourse, but when they aren't taking the proper precautions or in areas where a younger student can stumble across, that is when I have a problem. Dumbledore grumbled as he knew how teenagers are. At least Harry sets up wards when he uses abandoned rooms. Dumbledore grumbled to himself as his hunt continued. Touring the castle, Dumbledore heard some giggling as well as moaning. Heading in that direction, he arrived at the door as it swung open. Inside, he found Harry fixing his clothes as a pair of 7th years looked at the door and phrased, I will see you two later, Chloe and Zoe. Nodding, they ran away as they blushed red at the sight of being caught by the headmaster of all people, giving them a slight wave. Dumbledore just smiled as he closed the door. What can I help you with, Albus? He heard Harry ask curiously. I'm in need of your help. It must be very important if you are asking, Harry said as he grew serious. I am. In the latest checkup with Poppy, my sugar levels were a little elevated and nothing to worry about. However, using the chance, the other professors took my bag of sweets. Dumbledore stood there studying Harry, whose expression didn't lighten up. This is indeed a serious matter. Who would take another man's sweets? Should I take them back? Harry finally asked, but Dumbledore shook his head. No, they will know, and we can't let that happen. So I have devised a plan. Dumbledore began explaining as he and Harry whispered back and forth. After hashing it out, and both sides agreeing, the two shook hands. It was agreed that Harry would leave tomorrow and get the goods. After a few more minutes of please talk, they left the room. Once clear, Daphne, who was cleaning up the room, just shook her head at the pair. Boys will be boys, no matter their age. When the next day arrived, Dumbledore excused Harry from his lesson for the day, saying that their experiment they began is at a critical stage, and he needed Harry's help. While a few professors were skeptical, such as Snape and Salamander, they all just shrugged it off, saying it can't be helped. This, of course, was the lie Harry and him decided on. Neither of them had current projects that needed their full attention at this time. The Weasley prank was the only ongoing at the moment, and the youngest son has yet to ask for help from his family members yet. Now waiting in a secluded area on the first floor, Dumbledore waited for Harry to return with his sweets. It was nearly time for the drop-off and agreed time. Before he knew it, a blue bird flew in from the open window before transforming into an emerald-eyed teen. Dusting off his robe, he watched the messy black-haired teen pull a bag of sweets from his robe. "I'm sorry, but they didn't have any lemon drops or chocolate bars." "It's all good, Harry. These will do nicely." Dumbledore waved his hand as he inspected his goods. "Great, now the deal is complete. Let's get out of here." As both nodded and transformed into a pair of phoenixes, they flew out the window. Moments later, Professor McGonagall opened the door with a certain third-year blonde in green robes behind her. "Attention with me, Mr. Malfoy, for lying to a professor, saying the headmaster was lingering suspicious around here. My father will hear about this," Draco said as he stomped away. Nearly 2 months have passed since he was caught by his godson. For Sirius Black, this has been the most fun he had in the past decade. Even if he felt that his godson was hiding from him, he didn't mind. Now, since Christmas was around the corner, he was stumped on what he should buy his godson. At first, his options were fairly limited to begin with, so he thought about mail ordering the latest broom, the Firebolt. Yet, Harry shook his head, asking him not to. "What should I buy him?" Sirius thought hard as he watched Professor Vector sneaking her way up to the boys' dorm. When he first caught her, he was shocked at the Gryffindor head of house actions, while there were no real rules to stop her as the boys she targeted were 17. It was highly unethical and wrong, as he could only shake his head for the time being. "It's wrong on so many levels. I wonder if I should talk with Dumbledore," Sirius thought, but wondered if the man already knew. While Sirius debated, he decided to just let it pass. As long as Harry was fine, he didn't really care about the other boys. It wasn't like they were in danger or some life-threatening situation. Speaking of Harry, Sirius has been observing the boy for the last few months, and a few things struck him as odd. In the beginning, he quickly learned that Harry only slept a few hours each night, which worried him greatly, but once learning that he was fully rested, Sirius let it slide as his godson was healthy. The next weird thing he learned was, Harry is hugely popular among the female students, especially the older students, and at first thought it was because of his fame. It turned out to be wrong, as he fairly quickly discovered the cause with his nose. Torn between congratulating his godson for landing more girls than his father and himself combined, or lecturing him, Sirius was just glad they were all safe and no grandson or daughter would be arriving in the world anytime soon. Harry and the girls were fairly young after all. What was probably more shocking was when he learned that Harry wasn't dating just 1 or 2 girls, but 4 girls. There was even mention that a few more might be joining him in the future as he yet to snag them fully. However, that couldn't compare to all his friends with benefits, as Sirius found himself lost. When he asked his godson why he doesn't date a few more, Harry just told him he had his reasons and some of the girls were actually dating some other guys. Once Sirius learned that part, he was fairly mad. Before Harry explained that it was only a couple of them and they were swingers. Yeah, it was weird when the boyfriend came along to give permission and explained. Sirius recalled Harry's story. "While I could handle some of my girls having a couple female mistresses, a male was out of the question, as I would probably descend into a furious rage until I tore him to shreds." What neither of them really knew, as most didn't research incubus much. Most incubus didn't like other males or even other incubacy at times. Hence, both thought Harry was just the more extreme jealous type when males are involved. "This doesn't really help me on what I should get him," the escaped convict thought. "Should I get him some of the rarer tomes of magic? He seems to like researching magic." once more debating with himself on if he should give his godson some books. Sirius didn't think it was a good idea, as most books were darker in nature. While he trusted his godson, he didn't think it was smart to give them while he was in Hogwarts. Should I just send him some toys? Sirius thought, and wasn't thinking children toys either. He knows at least Harry would get a fair amount of use out of them, but does he even need them? Most of the girls leave smiling like hyenas or in a daydream. Maybe I should take him to the hidden mansion. Sirius thought and liked that idea. Only, I get a feeling that something unexpected will happen there. In the end, though, Sirius decided to take Harry to the hidden mansion. First, his godson was asking about it, and he was curious about what the feeling was. It wasn't a bad feeling, but just unexpected. During the winter break, Harry, who was moping around as Fleur's family went on vacation, so he was bummed out he couldn't visit her and could only mirror her like always, sitting in the common room as it was early morning, the day before Christmas. He rubbed Sirius' black fur as he laughed at the pink collar. It was Daphne and Fleur's gift to the wanted man, as well as their small prank to him. The man wore it in pride, as it was a gift from his godson girlfriends. Waking up, Sirius looked around before transforming back into his human form. Harry, do you still want to go to that secret mansion? Harry instantly brightened up. Yes. Great. Let's go. I already cleared it with Dumbledore. As both transformed into their canine forms to sneak out, they were soon racing down the halls and out of the castle. Once outside the wards, they transformed back and Harry grabbed Sirius's arm. Due to not knowing where they were going, he couldn't apparition himself there. Upon arriving inside a small forest, Harry looked towards the hidden mansion in front of him. It looked fairly familiar before he slapped his forehead, as he recognized it. He has been here once before, as an Auro in his past life.
This is the Play Wizard Mansion. Sirius,
Harry whispered, I love it, but you do know we are caught, right? Before Sirius had a chance to question what Harry was talking about, he found themselves surrounded by a group of women in thin, worn pajamas, letting out a small whistle. Sirius soon found out the problem. Harry, I think I messed up. Yeah, but I am not complaining. Harry replied as he sent some winks. 20 minutes later, Sirius found himself locked in a room alone. On the other side, however, he heard moans and giggling as Harry had a blast inside the mansion with all the models. Dumbledore, you're not the greatest wizard anymore. Sorry, but it belongs to my godson now. While the holiday cheer winds down and Sirius decides to head back to his family home, the man hoped he could get it clean enough for Harry to at least visit during the summer. It had nothing to do with Harry being very popular with the female students. Nothing at all. As such, Harry could finally stretch his legs on the full moon. Due to his godfather being next to him, Harry was holding back the transformation alongside Katie. Hence, they got a full night workout like dogs in heat until they dropped, which wasn't surprising as John did warn him about how this might happen. Harry, take me along to that hidden laboratory. Daphne asked, but sounded more like an order. Lately, due to hanging out with his godfather, Harry has been having minimum contact with his lovers and friends, something that was appreciated, and not as they also reconnect with their own. Daphne used the chance to reconnect with Tracy and Katie with the other two Gryffindor chasers. Luna was herself and mainly befriended Tonks, and Fleur sending letters with photos attached with her mistress. Originally, Fleur had two, but one got a boyfriend, so their status was reverted back to being only friends, something that made Fleur happy and sad at the same time, as the other one had to maintain a vela lust, which was something not many can do. Harry quickly thought about Daphne's request. I and Katie searched that place from head to toe and didn't find anything. What we did was already handed over to Dumbledore. I know, but it got me curious. Okay, we can go tonight, since the full moon is in a few days. Giving him a quick peck on his cheek, Daphne was happy. Before I forget, don't destroy any more walls or beds. Both Dumbledore and Poppy asked me to remind you to be careful around the full moon. Since your emotions are slightly aggressive around the full moon, I will try. Due to his incubus and vela traits, his full moons aren't as bad as Remus's or others. However, while he doesn't get sick around the full moon, his emotions are heightened and gets irritated very easily, which led to things getting broken, such as castle walls or beds, as he vents his frustration where no one is around. As such, the girls decided to give him space around each full moon, well, besides Katie, who get horny instead of irritated. Later that night, as they sneaked out of the castle, Harry transformed into his phoenix form and carried Daphne into the forest. While Daphne did have an animagaze form, its form was of a panda and not really suited for travel. She did mention that she may invest time in learning another form, but hasn't invested time yet, landing near the proper entrance that he and Katie discovered. Harry reverted to his human form, as Daphne fixed her clothes. I think I prefer airplanes and brooms as forms of flight. Hanging onto your feet as you grab my shoulder reminds me of some days, you know it. While the two's banter continued, they entered the lab. Most of the samples and corpses were removed, so only a few were littered around, as well as bloodstain covering tables and floors. Overall, it was pretty barren compared to the previous visits. So, what are we looking for? Harry asked as he began searching once more. While he traced his hand against the wall, he always kept an eye on Daphne. She wore some tight jeans and a black jacket with gloves and hat due to it being winter. I had my father do some digging after I was told about this place. Basically, I had him search for famous or infamous wizards from over 100 years ago who stood out in their search of immortality. Daphne explained as she searched under the desk. While he did find a few, most died either during their experiments or a fellow dark wizard. There was one, however, that was unaccounted for. So, who was this mystery fellow? Harry asked. A man named Arcus Grengas. He was a researcher for the Ministry before the Unspeakables came into being. So his research was fairly public, as his research formed most of the wizarding world, as is seen today, from ideas of racing brooms to pathways hiding parts of the wizarding world.
Like how to get on the train platform in Diagon Alley.
Exactly, Daphne said before continuing her explanation. However, one day, one of his fellow researchers caused an explosion. While normally it wouldn't have been much of an issue. However, Arcus, wife and child, were bringing him lunch. Let me guess, they ended up dying. Yes, and after that Arcus changed. He went from a cheerful man to a depressed man who threw himself into his work, while his friends and fellow researchers thought it was his way of coping for the death of his wife and child. It all came to a crashing halt one day. This is like one of those dramas we watched, Harry commented before shutting his mouth due to Daphne glare for interrupting. As I was saying, the researcher who killed his wife and child wasn't charged or fired. In less than a year, he was actually promoted to head researcher, which truthfully should have been Arcus. To add fuel to the fire, he even got the Medal of Merlin for all the work Arcus and the others did while claiming it was done by him and him alone. After that, Arcus snapped and vanished, saying he will take revenge on the country that wronged him, Daphne said. The thing that stands out was what he was researching before he vanished. He was studying on how to grant abilities and longer lives to wizards. Ouch, was all Harry could say. So what happened to the researcher who caused this? He died a month later. As it came to light, he was sleeping with the minister at the time behind his wife's back. As such, his wife and the husband of the minister killed him in revenge. Should I be worried? Harry asked. Not really, as those that you sleep with already know the deal, so I wouldn't worry that much in that regard. The Weasleys are a different matter altogether, though. Nodding, Harry calmed down in that regard. It wasn't that much of a secret for those involved with him that he sleeps around fairly often. However, for the rest of the school, it was a secret besides some rumors that fall, though as baseless and forgotten. Now, as for the Weasley, Harry was slightly disappointed in their performance this year. Ron has yet to ask for help from the others and only collected 2 more Dragon Balls as Harry was being generous. The twins were railed to doing their pranks and Percy was studying basically non-stop. As for Ginny, Harry didn't know what she was up to, but could smell various potions materials on her, some which weren't in the potion lab. I found something, Daphne quietly shouted, breaking Harry from his thoughts. As a secret drawer opened, a very tattered journal came into view. Walking over, Harry drew his wand and began running some scanning spells. After, making sure it was safe as Daphne ran her own. They picked it up and opened it. Inside was basically a diary of sorts, alongside research notes. However, towards the end, as it was easy to tell the man went mad over the years, they finally discovered the final product of his research. It is what he considered the perfect being. Well, this is something, Harry said a bit sarcastically. He basically traded a large portion of his magic for strength. In another part of the world, a certain soul fragment was finding this piece out the hard way. Ever since he took over this body, he's been having trouble digging out some of his magic and not understanding why. This must be Harry Potter doing, the being screamed. It was the early morning when the news came out. A single title in the Daily Prophet shook the whole magical world of Britain, all because a grimly-looking man and a very stressed man dominated the front page. Sirius Black innocent, Peter Pettigrew found alive. Harry, who was sitting at the Gryffindor table, smiled at the page. It was something he longs for in his first run-through of life. Now he finally got his wish at the end of January. While it took a bit longer than originally planned due to a few setbacks, basically everyone involved was happy as Harry got his godfather freed, Fudge got praised, and Amelia fixed a ministry mistake. Again, Dumbledore, while he didn't receive anything worthwhile, made a joke when he met with Harry last night. I can finally have my cabin back to myself. Well, jokes aside, as Dumbledore didn't mind Harry staying at his place. The actual reason they met was because Ron had finally asked his sister for help. After so many months of waiting, it had finally happened. I wish he had this kind of drive during the Horcrux hunt. Then again, the dumbass potioned himself, and when it wore off, Hermione and I already moved camp, Harry thought. Closing the paper, Harry wondered how some of the purebloods are feeling, since some aren't the biggest fans of the Black's family. Turning, Harry looked over at Draco, who was turning red in fury as he stared back. After all, should Sirius die, the Black fortune would be split between him and Sirius' three cousins. Well, their fortune is fairly large, and the split would give me nearly a quarter of my current wealth, Harry thought. But he hoped this wouldn't happen. He'd rather have Sirius alive, even if the man was more of a friend than a godfather. Who would be the wingman and peeking buddy then? While Sirius was still around in his dog form, he and Harry would sneak down to Hogmeads. There they would peek in on some of the young witches, some which put on a show for them unknowing. Maybe when Sirius gets a healthy look on him again, maybe we could enlist him to be an AV star if Daphne was serious. Harry thought as he decided to discuss this with Daphne at a later date. After finishing breakfast and walking out of the Great Hall, Harry heard some footsteps behind him and turned to see who it is. There, with long red hair, with light skin, without any beloche, appeared. Her eyes were solely on him, radiating lust and desire. The long black robe she wore did little to hide her figure, as her arms pulled her clothes back, allowing him to see her front figure clearly. "Susan, do you need something?" "Harry, I need your help with something important," she said, a bit hesitant as her eyes drifted downwards. "I need help with spell work." "Is it something only I can solve?" Harry asked, which she nodded. "Please," she begged. "All right, so lead the way." Harry motioned for her. Harry followed Susan from behind as her hips swayed side to side. Before Harry realized it, he was in a very familiar spot. The room of requirements. Susan quickly paced 3 times to make the door appear and quickly dragged Harry inside. There he saw a large bed and many toys alongside a see-through shower and bath. Blinking as he didn't think she was so bold, his nose picked up a flowery scent. The smell was sweet and smelled very nice as it quickly filled the room. Looking over to where it was coming from, he saw Susan, who began relaxing as she slightly blushed. "I hope it's not too much." "Kinky." Harry winked playfully. "So this is the help you need?" Susan just nodded. Laying side by side on the bed, Harry looked over at Susan, who seemed to be drawing something on his chest with her finger. Suddenly, a black wing spouted out of her back with a tail. "A succubus! Should have known," Harry said to himself. "Indeed, my fated one."
Another bonded, huh?
Was all Harry thought, with a shrug as it brought his total up to 6 in total for the time being. Sadly, in her mind, before she could discover the limits of this, her aunt caught her and sat her down. She still can remember that conversation clearly. "Susan, I believe it time for you to know something," Amelia Bones said as they sat down at the dining table, holding up her hand. "I already know about your adventures with Hannah as well as your strolls outside." Blushing at being caught by her aunt, someone who she hoped didn't notice or pretend to not notice. However, she never imagined her aunt would be so direct in the manner either, which just led to further embarrassment. "Aunt, can you not be so direct about it? I haven't been successful in my strolls either," she cried out with her voice cracking a bit. "I know," Amelia admitted without remorse. "It was mostly my doing for that." "Regrets? Now that's out of the way. I am sure you noticed some changes in you." Nodding to her aunt, Susan could only admit it. "What you may not know is back in our Bones ancestry, it wasn't uncommon for some males to marry succubi or females to incubi. Since then, this trait would awaken inside our family periodically. sometimes citing a generation or two. In fact, your grandmother was one as well as her mother. Shocked at the revelation of her family history, Susan felt it made sense. While she only knew a few things about succubi, it was in line with what is currently going on with her. However, one thing that didn't add up was the awakening process. Don't succubi usually accidentally kill their first partner during intercourse? Most of the time, but usually they have a family member beside them to stop this from happening. It still does happen from time to time though, but the DMLE usually lets it slide if it truly is an accident. Amelia admitted with a shrug. It's usually because a succubus or incubus drains the life force of their partners. In the beginning, they can't control it that well and usually accidentally take their partner's whole life force instead of a little. Why? It is their secret behind their long lifespans. As they take the life force from others, they can use it to maintain their youth and charm. I believe Mother was nearly 300 before she died, and wouldn't look much older than 20 if she was still here. If so, how come Harry is still alive? Susan asked, blushing as she admitted to sleeping with a boy already. Amelia just seemed to stare at her, before sighing. There are a few reasons this could happen. The first is he is your fated one. While it may sound like he is the only one, there are actually quite few walking around the planet. Just most can't find one, as they are incredibly rare. No matter how much a succubus sucks their life force, it has no effect on them, making them a highly sought partner. The next is he either an incubus or either his parents or grandparents were one. As such, he has a larger life force and will have a long life, maybe reaching 200 or more, Amelia said. This is usually the case. How will I know if he is my fated one? Attempted to suck his life force and see if it decreases or not. Usually after a few times, a succubus can sort of get a read on someone's life force so they don't accidentally drain them, right? Amelia said, shrugging, as she wasn't a succubus and could only say from what she learned from her mother. Now let's talk about using protection. Since that conversation, Susan had met Harry a few more times during the summer. While she tested him out, she finally could get a read and determined he was her fated one. It just brought up a problem on how to tell him. As such, she ended up spending half a year agonizing on how to tell him, which led to her craving his touch, but unsure how to proceed. Well, until she just dragged him into a room and just screwed him as her lust got too much to handle, which led to the current situation of her laying next to him with her wings and tail popping out for the first time. Another bonded one, huh? She heard him whisper. There more. Susan mentally cried as she wondered who. She wasn't so keen on sharing. What do you mean, another one? You are the sixth one to form a bond with me. If you want to hang out with them, or not, is up to you. She watched. Harry shrugged. Who are they? The first two are Daphne Greengrass and Fleur Delacour. Next is Katie Bell, Luna Lovegood, but the bond hasn't finished forming yet. Nymphadora Tonks, and you. There is also Venelana Lovegood, but that one up in the air for the time being, as we just don't know. Susan was shocked at the number, but was even more amazed that they allowed him to mess around with other girls still. She began wondering if he was an incubus instead of her fated one. It would only be later, after finishing Hogwarts and traveling with Harry, would she learn how close she was in her guess. Finally, as she sorted her thoughts out, I will be friends with them, but I will not be taking part in threesomes or whatever with them. I only want one-on-one for the time being. Harry just shrugged. That's fine, as most usually prefer that for the most part. I will just pretend I don't see you with other women too.
Again, that's fine, Harry said with a small laugh.
Then it's settled, Susan said before finding her clothes.
I guess it is.
Harry also began getting dressed. A grin for gaining another bonded and Daphne to find for some more fun. A few weeks passed by since Harry formed a bond with Susan. While there wasn't any grand reveal or anything, Susan soon fitted in and joined Harry in strolling around the castle at least once a week, something that he does with all his bond members who were at Hogwarts to spend time with them. As Valentine came and passed a few days ago, the Weasleys still found themselves the joke of the school, due to his Dragon Ball prank not really making much progress and his lack in pranking them this year. Harry decided to up his scale a bit. For Percy, he sent in a letter with a muscular man, winking, before a stream of owls delivered a large number of magazines of muscular men and men in women's cosplay clothes. Some were in French, and made him laugh, as Fleur must have joined in on his idea. You gotta love her, Harry thought, even a few days later. The Weasley twins, on the other hand, he did send the love potion alongside the Hour gender switch potion. However, he brought Daphne in on this one, It was quite a sight of them running out as they tried to deny it was theirs. Now I wonder if she bought any for herself. Harry thought he would need to thoroughly investigate this later. For Ron and Ginny, truthfully, it was really a mess. Harry sent in prank candy for Ron, and should have known. Ron, not really paying attention, threw a handful into his mouth, and turned into a rainbow duck with a unicorn horn and bat wings. Poor Pomfrey had to spend 3 hours trying to fix it, and in the end had to wait until the candy wore off. The verdict for Ginny, well, Harry decided to leave it up to Daphne and Fleur, something he would need to reconsider for next time. She basically got her own set of all the Weasley pranks, magazines full of furry, a potion, and clothes, set for her and Ron with prank candy. While it was a little overboard, Harry didn't really care. It might teach them a bit of shame since Harry found Ginny hidden potions set up a few days beforehand. Long story short, he ended up wrecking the setup and raging in an abandoned classroom to blow off steam. He later discovered one of the potions he ruined was a rage potion, something that made Daphne laugh before telling off for being an idiot. He was lucky it wasn't poison, and he was supposed to be 50, not a rash teenager. Finally, for Harry, he could only smile as he looked back on his gift the girls gave him. While Tonks and Fleur were sad they weren't in the castle, so they sent him photos. Harry ended up swinging his hips for the most of the day as he spent his time with them at separate times. The only one was Luna, as they decided to draw. While Luna basically drew Harry's current harem with room to add more women to the painting in the future. He basically looked like a king as he sat in the center with Fleur stretched across him and Daphne leaning on him. On their knees were Tonks and Katie with an arm and head on their knees. Finally, there was Susan and Luna, who were smiling as they had their elbows on the couch, all while they appeared in their 20s. As for how Luna knew who Fleur was and looked like, he just assumed she saw one of the less graphical pictures she sent him. Harry, on the other hand, basically drew all of Goku's transformations, as it was really all he could draw, decently. When he was trying to cheer Luna up after her family was killed, he picked up drawing, and the two would spend hours just doing so in silence, something that Daphne and Fleur would jokingly pick on him for, especially since his drawings really needed work as he wasn't really talented in that area. So he spent quite a few hours and took a few lessons. In the end, he only really learned how to draw Goku and his transformations, mainly because of how many times he ended up drawing him. Up in Dumbledore's office, Harry was reading a tome on the second level while chatting with the aged wizard. They haven't really had time to do so in the last few weeks. It was also decided that Harry would spend half of his summer with Sirius, mainly as Dumbledore would be fairly busy as the Tri-Wizard tournament was in its final stages.
So, Harry, how has your year been? Dumbledore asked.
Pretty good. There hasn't been any new Lycan born, but the pack grew. Susan Bones has become one of my bonds. Harry shrugged.
That good.
For what Dumbledore was referring to, Harry didn't really know and Picty was happy. Susan became his bondmate. So Harry, I have received a few complaints about Professor Vector. Quite a few students have seen her entering and leaving the boys' dorm fairly often. Do you happen to know anything? Yeah, she and a group of 7th-year boys are playing. Harry made motions with his fingers and Dumbledore nodded. In the beginning, it wasn't this often, but as the school year dragged end, it became more frequent. I just recommend switching the head of house once more on the excuse she recently took on a project, thus making her too busy to do her duty as head of house. Oh, why is that? And not simply firing her? A curious Albus asked. She is a pretty good teacher from what I know. I know that it should be fairly simple to find a replacement, but why go through the trouble? Also, it would save Hogwarts' reputation since the Tri-Wizard tournament is taking place here next year. Then do you have anyone in mind? Dumbledore asked. Why not have Hagrid do it for the remaining part of this year? Then there's plenty of time to find someone else during the summer. Harry shrugged. Dumbledore fell silent for a few minutes as he thought about it. Truthfully, he wasn't really all that worried about it, but Harry did bring up a good point. Hearing someone who came up with a similar idea to him made him make a decision. Very well, I shall inform both of them shortly. The aged wizard said, Do you feel happy giving this old man more work? Yes, Harry replied instantly before both burst out laughing. After chatting for a while longer, Harry decided to take his leave. Raise eternal Shenron, come forth and grant my wish. Outside a 1,000-year-old castle, Two redheads were smiling as orange orbs laid at their feet. Each orb held a number of stars, varying from 1 to 7. As each orb began to glow, the two smiles grew right before the orbs fell silent. Ron, is this supposed to happen? I don't know. The book didn't mention anything past collecting them, Ginny. From a nearby tree, a large blue bird with emerald green eyes watched with a twinkle in his eye. He watched as a fairly transparent green dragon appeared. Unlike in the manga, this dragon didn't touch the sky or turn the sky dark. In fact, this dragon didn't reach 7 feet. If it was anyone else, Harry was positive that they would have seen through this way before this. However, it seems he underestimated the Weasley greed. Well, at least the two youngest Weasleys. As for how this scene began, this requires going a bit back in time. A couple months ago, since Ron had brought his sister into the hunt, it had taken off in full blast once Ginny took charge. No more random searching or staying half the night checking random classrooms. It turned into an organized search which led to a rapid collection of the last few balls. From sneaking into the Slytherin dorm to prying it from a riddling portrait of Merlin. However, the most lackluster belongs to Dumbledore. How did a bag of candy bribe the man? Harry thought as Dumbledore gave up the ball for a bag of candy. I know I told him to make it easy, but this was too easy. What was done, and Harry didn't really care much about it. His prank didn't really turn out as planned. Since everything was set, the problem was more that Ron and the rest of the Wellasiers weren't up to his expectations. They didn't really follow the plan he laid out or their behavior pattern he knew, which was fair, as it had been decades since he knew them as teenagers and not adults. Something he had failed to take into account, thus leading to his failed prank. Now he found himself at the end, where the two were summoning the dragon. There just wasn't the fun or laughter to come, just the thought of it to end. I guess I should bring my pranks on the Weasleys to an end, Harry thought. Shenron, please give me the Potter, Black, and Malfoy family fortune, Ron shouted loudly. Really, Ron? You idiot. If we stick to the plan, we will get both the Potter and Black fortune. You should have wished for us to have immortality or all the fortunes of every magical family in Lycan. Bloody hell, Ron apologized fairly quickly. My impatience cost us millions. Before Ginny began to tear into her brother, her brow quickly narrowed as she looked at the dragon. From beginning to end, it didn't move or speak. Now that she thought of it, it was suspicious. Ron, do you find something odd with this dragon? Ginny asked. Ron pulled out the journal and looked up at the dragon. Now that you mention it, the book says it should shoot up into the sky, weaving through the clouds as the sky darkens, mimicking night. Then in a loud booming voice, saying it will grant any wish. Ron, this dragon is not even as tall as that 9-foot tree, much less reaching the sky. It is also transparent now that I focus on it. Were we pranked? I bet it was the twins. Ron roared as he turned beet red. While he was glad they decided to wait until night to do this, it was still embarrassing to waste a year on being pranked. My grades dropped due to the amount of time I spent on this, and this is my reward. Nothing. Please, your grades weren't anything special. They are at the point that many of the professors are considering holding me back. That's your fault, Ron. If you brought me in faster than this, wouldn't have happened. Ginny yelled back. Well, at least I was trying. Much better than you in your attempt to seduce Harry. Please, we are only 12 and 13. If I try to be any more forward, it might cause this entire plan to fail. I need to show him I want him as a lover, not his fame like a fangirl. Well, you were doing so great. He barely knows you exist. Ron sarcastically said. Whipping out her wand, Ginny pointed it towards Ron with the point shining bright. At least I didn't drift away, unknowing, until it was too late. Now we can't even use loyalty potions as it would be a bit suspicious. Besides, if he should fail to notice me by next year, we will start using love potions. Up his tree, as he listened to this, Harry only shook his little bird head at this failure of a plan. The first issue is that he has an army of bonds and friends with benefits to keep an eye on him. So if he suddenly falls for someone, they will test him for potions the moment they discover oddity. The second is he would be leaving after the Triwizard Tournament with most of his bond mates. A few still have to finish up their education, and he doubts their guardians would allow him and the other to lead their studies. Maybe after I finish off Grandpa, Voldemort, and travel for a couple years, I will come back as a part-time instructor for a while, Harry thought as he took flight. It was pointless to listen to the two argue as it turned into a sibling fight. In a cell of Azkaban, a chubby middle-aged man was curled up in the corner. On his arm, a dark mark presented as he rocked back and forth. Suddenly, he felt a slight pulse from the mark. "The Lord is calling," he said as he transformed and waited for his chance to escape. An hour later, when the meal arrived, he ran out of the cell and soon vanished from the island. It was only a day later when it was discovered that a prisoner escaped. As the school year came closer to the end, the fifth years became more stressed as the Odebual and Newt drew closer, something Harry took advantage of as he helped many females relieve their stress. Well, until the time for the exams arrived. Now sitting in the testing hall for charms, with Daphne and Katie sitting on either side of him, the three of them scribbled furiously on the sheets in front of them. Hovering not far from them, an old lady slowly paced around the room on her cane, but her eyes kept drifting back to them. She was Griselda Marchbanks, who had spent a large majority of her life as an wizarding examinations authority. It is said she was on the board when Dumbledore himself was a student, and took the exams. So, over her long career, she had seen a few taking the exam early. Sadly, most received a lower score than they could have had if they waited. However, it was the student choice, and they even received permission from most of their professors. In the end, she allowed them in, and now was curious on how they were going to do. At the speed she saw their quills moving, either they were well prepared or were guessing. She hopes it was the first option, as it would waste both hers and their times otherwise. While the exams were taking place, up in the headmaster office, Dumbledore was frowning at the latest news that he just received. It would appear that Peter Pettigrew had escaped from prison. As for where the man is now is currently unknown, much like when he escaped exactly. Harry is not going to be pleased. It also means that Voldemort is going to begin gathering his forces. Dumbledore hummed to himself sadly. The wizarding world already had enough death and destruction last around. However, this was already in some of our future plans. Since time wants certain points to happen, both of us figured this might happen. Dumbledore thought as he tapped his finger. I will tell him after his exams are done. No sense in worrying him or distracting him, as no major move will be made for a while. Back down in the exam hall, the written portion came to an end with either most sighing in relief or worried they did bad. However, this didn't last long, as the practical exam was about to begin. As most were told to leave the room until they were called, a few cursed their names being first in line. "How did you do, Harry?" Daphne asked. "It seemed a bit easier than I thought." Harry replied, truthfully, it was actually easier this time around than last time. Maybe it was because he wasn't stressing out about Voldemort being back, or a year of the entire wizarding world making fun of him. "Say you too. I thought it was pretty difficult, but it couldn't compare to our study sessions," Katie complained. "Well, since we are basically attempting to shove all the knowledge up to the new tea down your throat, I would assume that this was easier," Harry thought, but chose not to comment on that part. "I don't know about you two, but I could use a Harry massage." Daphne stretched out her arms. "Is that what we are calling it now?" Harry joked. "I could use one too," Katie said as her eyes glossed over for a moment. "Katie, you literally had one a few hours ago," Daphne asked, a bit tensed. While she didn't mind Katie, the nympho tendencies could get on her nerves at times. "That was a few hours ago, and this is now." Katie tilted her head. "At least I am better than Susan." "Not by much," Daphne muttered. Ever since Susan picked Harry out as a mate and her fated one, it wasn't uncommon to find the said girl hanging around him. Luckily, it seemed like a in-the-moment thing, as she soon became normal on the most part. She just seems to find Harry throughout the day to get a quick fix, or just to hang out with him. "That reminds me, are we going to use the same method we did last summer?" Harry asked. Rolling her eyes at him, Daphne answered it. "I don't see why not. Only a couple of them hooked up with someone. So besides them, I assume most will be fine with the arrangement." "Oh, can I join more?" "I don't think my family is planning anything this summer, so I should be free most of the summer," Katie begged. "Those limited visits last year were hard." "Fine," Daphne said as she pulled out her black book. "Let me see. I'm sure that most of the bondmates won't mind switching or moving some of the dates around. So Tata, Fleur, and Susan can have their Harry fill. Don't forget about Venelana. I have been exchanging a few letters throughout the year, and she agreed for a couple dates during the summer," Harry pointed out. "Do you think she could be a Bond?" Katie asked. Harry just shrugged as he didn't know, but wouldn't be surprised either way. She is, after all, is a Lovegood, a family that is known for doing things their own way. Stange or not. "Katie, you're up." An older girl walked up to the trio as she left the testing room. "Let's get this over with." Katie strolled into the room confidently. A while later, she walked out looking exhausted but wore a smile as Daphne walked in. "So how was it?" Harry asked. "Tricky, but I believe I got this." After a while, it was finally Harry's turn. Stalling into the exam room, he waited to begin. "Mr. Potter, you may begin." Nodding, Harry began casting a wide variety of charms, some of even his own creation. Most were 6th or 7th year spells, which earned him a few extra points. By the end, Harry stood in front of a couple shocked wizards and witches. "Mr. Potter, I haven't seen such a display since Albus was standing there," Griselda Marchbanks said with a hint of praise. Nodding and leaving the room, Harry just smiled as he was sure he had charms in the bag.
Now on to the other exams, Harry thought.
By the end of the 2-week exams, Harry had shocked the examiners alongside Daphne and Katie, mainly due to their skills and their ages, which also brought them to a close on their school year. A week passed by since another school year came to an end. Floating listlessly on his broom, Harry just stared up at the blue sky as he coasted around Hogwarts. He was thinking hard as he felt a change inside of him and how he behaved this past year. Ever since he came back in time, he has basically been dominated by his incubus instincts. Due to that, he slept around, basically on a daily occurrence. Now that enough time has passed and he can manage his lust now, he felt his bondsmates, or future bondmates, can handle him for the most part. After all, he has a total of 6 confirmed bondmates at this point in time, 2 soulmates, and 4 mistresses' wives. Once his lust had subsided, Harry noticed another change, and that was his anger. While the girls didn't really call him out on it, he knew that this couldn't continue, and the full moon only brought it out more. So now his next goal should be fixing this before it spirals out of control. "I wonder why it is my anger," Harry sighed. "I forgive the Weasleys and make peace with them. But you haven't really accepted all of yourself either." A deep, almost growl-sounding voice echoed through Harry's head. "Haven't I?" Harry answered. "Harry, Harry, Harry." A smooth, almost taunting-like voice replied instead. "You basically just been going through the motions, never truthfully embracing all parts of yourself. Did you truthfully think an Tinbus is this slow, or an alpha Lycan is only slightly larger than a large dog?"
Isn't it because I haven't grown up yet?
Harry thought before wondering why he was arguing with himself. "Please," the growling voice sarcastically said, "you're supposed to be the king, the first, the ruler of Lycan, yet you're only slightly stronger than your average werewolf. You should be unparalleled in strength and form a mighty pack to call upon when needed." The wolfish voice paused before the intense rage could be felt with each word. "To make it worse, you even went and gained a phoenix form and contracted with the spirit king of water. Yes, and incubi aren't all about lustfit. We move to our desires and make them happen. Sure, we like beauties and have a dislike toward other males, but you just have been fulfilling the roles expect you to." Harry silently felt this voice was right and felt he only was fulfilling his needs and coasting in life. Besides some pranks and forming a few bonds, he'd just been diving in beds of different women or running under the full moon, never really doing much to discover or investigate his actual abilities he got. "Then what should I do?" Harry asked, confused and conflicted. "You need to learn to accept parts of yourself and get rid of these blasted, unneeded forms you picked up. Breathing underwater, please, you're a wizard, Lycan, and an incubus. Figure something out instead of using borrowed power. You're an alpha and shouldn't be under anyone's rules but your own," the wolfish voice roared. Clutching his forehead as the words rang through his head, Harry felt no closer to this unexpected goal. "As much as I don't want to agree with this wolf, he is right," the smooth voice answered. "A lot of these forms or contracts you gathered are just silly. It's basically like you want to become a jack of all trades, but master of none." "How should I go about this then?" Harry roared at them. "Figure it out yourself," both voices answered before vanishing. Floating on his broom, Harry just felt confused and troubled. He felt like a boy who just got scolded by his parents, yet confused on what he did wrong. All he knew was that he should look at what both offered him and not others' options. "It's not like there are books on the subject to learn," Harry thought before realizing, maybe a time to visit my vault. While Harry was basically arguing with himself, at the Weasleys, a family meeting was taking place. All gathered around the table, while a few looked uninterested or didn't like the topic. They didn't voice their thoughts or attempted to stop the meeting, just allowing them to carry on with what is taking place. Recently, our plan on taking all of the Potter family fortune hit a bit of a snag. Molly Weasley said, "She is a short, plump, and kind-looking woman. Her hair is fiery red and warm brown eyes with light skin. Well, she is when in public, but now her eyes look like a saber-toothed tiger and fairly cold." Ron, you not only became a bit more distant to Harry over this year, but barely passed by the skin of your teeth. This coming year, you need to attempt to get into his good graces once. Molly barked. "Also, please pay attention to your studies. It wouldn't do for you to be held back." "Yes, Mother." Ron grumbled. While he wished he could say he was busy falling for a prank all year, he wisely kept his mouth shut as he would be in a world of trouble otherwise. "Percy, you completely failed in your part," Molly said, and watched the boy just shrug. "Fred and George, you both should attempt to integrate yourself into his friend group. I know from your letter that your girlfriends are friends with Katie Bell, who hangs around him a lot. Maybe you can take him on a triple date or something," Molly said as the twins looked dumbfounded at her. "Mom!" Ginny spoke up. "If he goes on a date with another girl, what about me?" "Ginny, he should go on a few dates so he will be able to see how wonderful you are when you approach him," Molly answered. "Honey, don't you think it's time to stop your plan before someone actually gets hurt?" Arthur asked before falling silent, before 3 glares landed on him. "We are doing this for the betterment of the family," Molly said. "Bring the discussion to an end. Now, how should we go about inviting Harry to the Quidditch match this summer?" "Mother, wouldn't Sirius be taking him? He is, after all, his godfather," Fred asked. "Don't be silly. I doubt that man would go to such a crowded place anytime soon." A large debate on how to invite Harry over took place before they decided to just send a letter, all in an attempt to invite Harry over a few days before the match. Sitting below a tree, Harry wondered what he should do. Ever since he argued with himself, he has been slightly lost with himself. He knew ever since coming back, he'd just been playing around, never really thinking about the consequences of his actions, such as becoming a phoenix animagus, forming contracts with water spirits, or playing around with dangerous magics. While he was sure that Daphne and Fleur already figured it out and were cleaning up his messes, well, mostly Daphne trying to keep track of him and all his bed partners, but neither had a problem calling him an idiot when needed. "Harry!" An aged voice called out to him, breaking him from his musing. "Are you ready?" Standing up, Harry looked at Dumbledore and nodded. With 2 quiet pops, they appeared in a small familiar town, Little Hangleton. Walking a small trail, the two headed to a familiar destination, a small cabin shack that led to the alleged descendant of Salazar Slytherin. "So, what is on your mind, Harry? You seemed distracted since school ended," Dumbledore asked as both drew their wands. "A lot of things. The main one is the future, though," Harry said vaguely. "The future? We all worry about the future, but that isn't what you're worried about. It's just a personal thing. Nothing to worry about." Staring at the teen, Dumbledore just nodded as continued down the trail. He trusts Harry can handle his own problems. The teen was old enough in his mind. After arriving at the first ward, the two of them waved their wands. In mere moments before either could put any effort into it, the first ward fell to their probe of the ward. Once they knew that it actually fell, neither made any movements to move forward. "That fell way too easy," Harry commented dryly. "I have to agree." Dumbledore nodded. "Well, let's continue." 2 more wards fell fairly quickly before they reached the shack, and both had a few killing curses tied in. Neither curse was fast or painless, either as one targeted the nervous system and the other would send one into a panic attack. "Did he set the wards wrong?" Harry asked sarcastically. "Or they haven't been renewed in a while." Dumbledore added, "Whatever it may be, we should just get in and out," Harry said, "without dying." Pushing open the wooden door, Harry's eyes looked around the dusty shack. Waved in his wand a few times, he found nothing cursed or even magically inside. Well, besides a small wooden box holding what he came after. Easily disarming the curses on inside the box, Harry opened it, revealing a very familiar stone. "So this is the resurrection stone," Harry heard Dumbledore say in awe. "It can't bring back the dead, sir," Harry said as he stuck the ring into his pockets. A deep sadness filled the headmaster's eyes as he nodded in agreement. It was easy to tell he had an idea for the stone, but Harry didn't really care. After he gets the wand from Dumbledore, he will just make the enchanted items disappear. "Well, time to go," Harry said as he shrugged. The reason he brought Dumbledore in the first place was for backup and an insurance plan. Now he found out it wasn't needed. He figured at least now he wouldn't get scolded by the girls. A few days after retrieving the stone, Harry was left with only winning the Elder Wand, something he didn't really much care for. "Are you ready, Albus?" Harry asked as his wand was in hand. Across from him, standing on the flat ground in front of his cabin, Dumbledore also had his wand drawn. "Whenever you're ready, Harry. Then let's start easy." Harry smiled as he silently sent a stunner to begin with. "Haven't we did this before?" Albus laughed as he deflected it. Ramping it up, a rainbow of colorful spells were fired from both sides. From simple to more rare jinxes, both sides fought. Weaving and dodging the spells, the two didn't hold back. If one didn't know better, it could have looked like a duel to the death. Finally, after a lucky stunner from Harry Wand managed to slip through Dumbledore's defense, while Albus was still quick and nimble for his age, his stamina wasn't so lucky. To be drawn into a battle of stamina wasn't doing him any favors. Now he could only watch as the blue tunner impacted him, throwing him to the ground, all while he felt the connection between him and the Elder Wand vanish. Reviving the elderly man, Harry was grinning ear to ear. As he grabbed the wand, he watched the headmaster pouting like a teenager. "Come on, you lost fair and square?" Yeah, Albus said. "So what do you have planned for the Hollows?" "I'm going to make the Hollows disappear." Harry shrugged. Truthfully, they are more like toys than anything special. Smiling as he heard this, Dumbledore just nodded as he offered a hand to Harry to help him up. "I think I might have pulled something in that fall." A small bit of pain appeared in his back. Shaking his head, Harry just held back his laugh. For a man who just lost a legendary wand, he was offered chipper, something not many could do. In another part of the world, a certain rat was currently bowing his head as his body trembled. Two red eyes were staring down at him like he was an insect. My lord," Peter Pettigrew stuttered. "Peter, why have it taken you this long to track me down?" "I'm sorry, my lord. Due to being on the watch list and distant, it took me time to track you down." A small hum was his reply, as Peter tried to keep his trembling to a minimum. The sight of Voldemort was too much to handle, since he wasn't sure if he would live or die at any moment on a whim. "Tell me everything you know about Harry Potter." "Yes, Lord." On a small scheduled beach in France, Harry leaned back in his chair as he listened to the waves crash across the shore. As he slowly swirled his glass of water, he let out a sigh as his eyes drifted over to a 30-year-old man with long hair and nicely trimmed mustache and goatee. "Sirius, why are we the only ones on this beach? It is nearly noon." As if insulted and a little dramatic. "Don't ask me, you're the one that said they will be here." Glaring at the man who happened to be his godfather, Harry just blew his bangs up, slightly frustrated. The full moon was in a few days, but that wasn't the source of his annoyance. It was a man in his 30s trying to act like he was still 15. Harry didn't blame the man for the most part, as he was locked up for over a decade. He knew it would take Sirius a bit to adjust again, but he didn't remember the man being so hyper. The man was like the Energizer Bunny with unlimited energy. Well, when he was drunk or staring at the photo album of himself during his school years. "Who did you invite anyways?" Sirius asked. "Daphne Greengrass and Fleur Delacour. I would have invited the others I'd have a bond with or possible bond," Harry began to say, but a series of soft pops appeared biting them. Turning his head, Harry saw very familiar women wearing a variety of bright bikinis, while most of them, as the youngest, was in a one-piece suit, which was mainly due to her young age. The rest, however, were rocking their outfits and showing off their bodies. "Sirius, if you don't close your mouth, I will poke your eyes out," Harry commented. In front, wearing a vibrant green bikini, was Daphne, who wore a large hat and held a large bag. She was smiling as she had an arm linked around the woman next to her. The woman was in a blue bikini with a famous S logo on each piece of fabric. "I told you he would like it," Fleur said as she puffed out her chest. "Please, he likes anything we wear that shows our bodies off to him." Daphne rolled her eyes. "I'm betting he would like to be Kryptonian for the X-ray." Behind the two was Nymphadora, rocking a white bikini and sea blue hair. She seemed to be in a playful mood, as her top barely contained the two peaks she was currently rocking. Her hips swayed to the left, bumping into the girl next to her with a spacey look. Luna, who Harry was actually surprised to see here, wore a silver bikini with a ring in the center and no straps. It was also notable she certainly grew up once more, as she filled out nicely since he last saw her nearly a month ago. However, behind her, Venelana stood awkwardly as she tried to cover herself. She wore a pale blue suit with a low waistband that somehow looked fine on her, but could easily go the other way on someone else. Next to her, with a shed of embarrassment in her slightly thin outfit that only covered what needed covered. Susan tried to look disinterested in the group and kept her eyes on Harry, only her eyes keep drifting to the other girl, where she would nod. Finally, the last two were Fleur's mother, Apolline, and her little sister Gabrielle. Both of them were a bit more modest in their outfit. They wore and brought their own stuff. Sorry, we are late. It took a bit to gather the others, and buy swimsuits, Daphne said before looking at Harry. It was on short notice after all. Sorry, love. It was why I only sent you and Fleur the invitation and figured I will make it up to the others later. Harry shrugged, which she nodded too. You're just lucky we were planning for a get-together later on. Fleur swayed over to him before giving him a kiss as she took a seat on his lap. That's why they were whaled to come. Oh, I didn't know about that. If so, I would have sent a letter. Harry smiled as he ran his hand gently down her cheek and back. Sorry, no mails allowed, Tonks said as she gave him a quick peck on the cheek and began placing her stuff down. Harry just hummed as he gave Daphne a long-lasting kiss before receiving a few pecks on the lips, or cheek by the rest. Even Gabrielle gave on his cheek since she said it fun. Apolline just laughed as shook her head before turning to a frozen Sirius. Due to his hearing, Harry could hear the man muttering to himself, "My godson has more game than I do. How does he keep so many girls around him without them getting jealous?" Well, all of you look lovely, Harry commented as he wrapped his arms around Fleur. Due to nearly a year away from each other, none of the girls really were envious or jealous. Apolline and Gabrielle. Harry just nodded as he saw a mischief look in Luna's eyes. He was fairly sure it was a mistake, as he remembered in the future where Luna and Daphne would go round and round about clothes, while it wasn't remotely close to this, but about her many hats and animal outfits. Harry was sure that Luna did this on purpose. Did something happen in the future and Luna came back? Harry thought as he stared at her. I will just ask her later. Harry, as much as I would love to, I don't think our present company would agree, Fleur whispered into his ear. Yeah, Harry nodded, while all the girls knew about his habits and him sleeping with most of them, which wasn't a problem or unreasonable either. Maybe in a bit we can disappear for a few minutes. Fleur whispered back with a giggle as his wand liked that idea. You're not the only one, Harry whispered as each girl gained a strange light in their eyes and licked their lips. Only Apolline and Gabrielle didn't follow suit, and Sirius looked like he took a hard blow to his heart. Sorry, Sirius, but I got game and you don't.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more fanfiction. See you next time.